Hello there and welcome back to Personal Best Outdoors. I'm Chris. Hey, for those of you guys that are maybe stopping by for your first time, welcome to the channel. All we really kind of do here is just kind of get involved in pretty much anything and everything archery and bow hunting related. Relatively new channel, just went through a process for building an 11 effector arrow, or these arrows right here. If you're not familiar with Doc Ashby's 12 factors for arrow penetration, this is all of those minus the tapered shafts or shaft profile, just because there's not a tapered shaft with enough spine to be able to shoot the point weight that I want to shoot out of this bow. If there is, I haven't found it yet. Maybe we'll do a build like that later on as I do like some recurve or traditional type archery videos. But basically what I wanted to do today, so those of you that have seen these other videos will know the process that I went through to get basically these arrows built. Okay, so we tuned the arrow to the bow. We started by with a perfectly tuned bow, which is this VXR. I showed you that on camera. Shooting straight through the center of the burger button hole, 13/16 off the inside of the riser, and we kept cutting carbon length down until we got the perfect length to have the perfect dynamic spine for this bow with the point weight that I intended to shoot, being a 75-pound bow at 27.5 inches in draw length. Basically, because you guys watch me build those hunting arrows, or maybe you didn't, if you didn't see those videos, definitely check them out. It's kind of a cool process. The thing that I realized is, as long as my bow didn't fall out of tune, by the time that I got done building those arrows, all I really had to do was take one of these big, massive fixed blade broadheads that people say, oh yeah, those are never going to fly because they're 1 inch wide and 3 inches long. That's so much surface area, they're never going to fly right. I'm here to tell you that they do. I honestly, when I put them on there and started shooting them, they grouped perfectly with my field points out to 70 yards. It's about all I can get here. I'm shooting off the side of my house down at the archery target that's back there. Any more than that, I'd have to be shooting from the street, and I don't really care to do that. But anyway, figured out that these fly perfect. Okay, the reason for that is because I took the time to make sure that these broadheads spun perfectly on this carbon, and we have the perfect dynamic carbon for this bow. And so I come out of paradox really quick, and because my arrow is oriented straight as it leaves the string, it just stays that way. But if you maybe haven't done that process, and you're getting ready to go hunting, I told you I would bring you a lot of technical kind of how-to type videos, and so we're going to do a little bit of broadhead tuning today. What I've done is I've intentionally moved my arrow rest, out of center shot, so that way we're going to guarantee that these do not group with that. And I'm going to show you how to get your field points grouping perfectly with your broadheads. I think that's honestly the best way of saying that, and I'll explain it to you here in a minute. But there's two ways of doing it. There's a long way, which is honestly the way that everybody shows you for the most part on YouTube. I'm going to explain to you why the way that I'm going to show you, I think actually there's no way of saying it. It does work better because it's going to make sure that this thing, that especially with shooting a fixed blade broadhead, these basically are veins on the front of your arrow, and they're going to depict kind of how this arrow leaves the bow. Instead of trying to, I guess, I'll just have to show you with an arrow. But anyway, we'll go ahead and explain that here in a little bit. I'm going to show you the way to get these things flying perfectly straight with your field points. Just fair warning, after you're done, you'll probably have to bump your sight a little bit left or right or up or down depending upon where your broadheads are grouping in relation to your field points, but not super hard to do, right? So let's go ahead and get you guys set up. I have the GoPro down there. We're going to be shooting from 60 yards, and we will get these things flying together. So stay tuned. All right, so basically what we've got set up here, I basically like only working on one, I guess, direction at a time. So for starters, we're going to do the windage. So all I'm going to be aiming at is this blue line. Okay, I'm not worried about how high or how low my arrows are hitting. I'm trying to remove a whole dimension out of that to just get me focusing on one line as much as possible to get me the truest reading possible. So from 60 yards, I'm going to be aiming right down the center of this line. Just in interest of full disclosure, all the way back there is super bright and here is really shadowed, so it's kind of hard to see this tape around my pins from down there. So I'll be honest with the results and everything if that was like, hey, a bad shot on me. But basically we're going to get started. We're going to check the windage of my broadheads in relation to my field points. So let's go ahead and get that going. All right, so we're going to check windage first. Not worried about my elevation, just literally the left and right impacts on the target. So here we go. Broadhead first. Okay, that shot felt pretty good. Looks like the arrow hit the tape. I just know that the field point isn't though, because I took my rest out of alignment. And actually, this is going to work really well for explaining to you why I do my broadhead tuning this way. So, broadhead hit the tape. We'll show that on video. The field point is not going to. Alright, so as you can see, broadhead hit tape. My field point definitely did not. So I'm gonna have to make a rest adjustment. Now, this is my broadhead. Most people think that because your broadhead, it creates drag just like your vanes do, that you want to bring your rest towards your field point. I don't do it that way. I actually move my rest towards my broadhead. I'll explain the reason why I do that, but just know that what I did for this video, because my field points and my broadheads were both grouping perfectly before I decided to make this video, I intentionally took my rest out of alignment. And what I did is I moved it towards the riser, okay? I also did something with the elevation that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but I know that I took it out of grouping the way that it needed to, so instead of hitting here, my field point is now hitting here. It seems super counterintuitive, but we will explain it. Some of you guys may get this, but we'll explain it towards the end of this video. Just know that I took my rest out of alignment by moving it in towards the riser. So go down there, make a rest adjustment. Just one little click, even though I did more than that, but we're going to show you just how quickly that improves this stuff. So let's go ahead and do that now. Turn these knocks off, save some of the battery on them. All right, here we go. All right, so we went down there to the GoPro and talked about the results, but basically we're gonna make a rest adjustment now. So my broadhead group to the left, it actually hit the tape. My field point group to the right. Now, what I did to take this out of alignment was I moved my rest towards the riser. So I know it needs to go out from the riser because these were grouping perfectly prior to me messing it up to make this video for you guys. Now, it seems counterintuitive. Most people would be like, oh yeah, you need to move your rest towards your field point. There is a way that you can do that, but the problem that happens is you're moving your broadhead and your field point together, right? That gap will eventually tend to get a little bit smaller, but you still end up not having them group. In some cases they will. So I know what direction it needs to go. It's going to go towards the broadhead, so I'm going to loosen this nut here on top. You can't really see it, but it's right there. Okay, I'll loosen that. And we're just going to do, just to show you how quickly this changes things, we're going to do one click out. How's that for cat-like reflexes? And we're going to tighten this down. And now let's shoot again. Okay, broadhead first. Okay, looks like that broadhead is maybe just towards the right hand side of the tape. Let's see where this field point goes. All right, so as you'll notice, this is my broadhead, this is my field point. If you recall in the last shots, broadhead was somewhere about here, field point was right here. I moved my rest 2 micro clicks, so basically 6/1000ths of an inch, because it's like 0.003 inches per click, right? Most people will tell you to move the rest towards your field point. What ends up happening is as you do that, yes, your broadhead will move because your broadhead is leaving, kind of pointing that angle anyway, but your vanes end up taking over and correcting that. You still kind of have the fixed vanes on the front with the fixed blade broadhead, and that just ends up being the new trajectory that it's at. As soon as those vanes catch up behind the broadhead, that's where it continues to go, okay? Field points, not so much. They're more aerodynamic, so they don't catch wind at the front or drag, excuse me, like a broadhead will. So by moving that rest towards where your broadhead is, you're forcing that field point to leave your bow slightly different to cause it to follow along that same path as your broadhead. Now, so you move towards the broadhead for your windage, you move away from the broadhead for your elevation. So now we're going to shoot these again. I'm going to stop this GoPro and start it again because I know I'm getting low on battery and I don't want to lose this entire thing. But stop it and refilm again. Now we're going to shoot just strictly aiming at this line. I don't care where it's going to hit at as far as, you know, my left or my right, my windage. I literally only care about my point of impact up and down. So let's go ahead and get set up for that. All right, so now we're gonna check elevation. So keep in mind, I don't care if my arrows hit to the right, I don't care if they hit to the left. All I care about is how high up or how high down they are. I'm gonna be aiming my sight pin kind of along this axis here, just to eliminate, you know, the left and the right stuff. It's just one less dimension to focus on. So I'm going to be, obviously my pin's going to be kind of floating like this. They're always kind of swirl and circle and kind of be a little bit erratic, but I'm just trying to eliminate any of the left and right stuff from what I'm currently doing, because we just worked on that and we got them perfectly in line as far as windage is concerned. So now it's time to address elevation. So yeah, I'll probably, for releasing my broadhead, you know, the hope is always that it's going to break here in the center, but I don't care if it breaks over here. I'm going to probably try and keep my broadhead a little more to the left, my field point a little bit more to the right, just to prevent me from smacking one with the other, because these take a lot of time to build, and I would hate to lose one of them while getting things sighted. So anyway, like I said, just strictly worried about elevation right now. So let's go back to 60 and take these shots. All right, here we go. Gonna check and make sure that the elevation of my field heads or field points to broadheads is consistent or equal with one another. Spoiler alert, I know they're not because I took them out of alignment. So anyway, let's go ahead and shoot. What I suspect that I'm gonna see is I suspect that my broadhead is going to be low and my field points are gonna be high. Just based on what I know about how I moved my rest out of center shot to be able to make this video, but let's see. completely off. Like I said, I'm not worried about my left and my right, but I should have done a little bit better than that, I think. Let's go ahead and shoot the field point. Okay, and let's go see what we got. So about as I figured, Broadhead obviously hit the tape. I mean, there could have been a little bit of user error there. I may have broken a little bit higher than what I had expected to. This one may have done the same thing. It is really hard to see from down there because down there I'm in the sun and this is in the shade, and this blue tape doesn't really stand out the greatest, just to be fully transparent against a green pin. But there's enough here. I know that's outside of my margin of error, so there's enough here to go off of. And to be perfectly honest, you know, to make this video, I moved my rest out of where my broadheads were grouping with my field points. And so I know that I brought my rest down towards the shelf. You know, we can kind of see that relationship here. So I'm going to bring my rest up the 2 clicks that I took out of alignment. And my guess would be, as long as I make good shots, that we're going to be breaking along this tape, or at least be in the same, you know, elevation of one another, to be, you know, within probably like a ½ inch or so. So let's go ahead and pull these and we'll see. All right, so as we discussed, you know, Broadhead group lower than my field point. I almost forgot to film, as it was, I forgot to film me adjusting my rest. But basically, so on the ham ski, these 2 screws, one right here and here, you loosen those up, and then your elevation adjustment knob's right there. Okay, the one right here is for your windage, so to move your sight left or right, or your rest, excuse me. This one is to change your elevation. So I moved it 2 clicks up because my field point was higher than my broadhead. So let's go ahead and shoot those and see what we got. No, it's windy. Okay, broadhead hit tape, it looks like. Let's see what the field point does. Wait for this wind to settle. Can't really see it super well on camera. Some of my trees are back there a ways, but you can kind of tell by the grass. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, they look like they are perfectly in elevation with one another. Let's go down there and talk about what we have. So you can see it for yourself. It took me a minute to take those 2 shots just because it was really windy and stuff down there. It took me a minute to get everything settled, but you can see right here's the bottom of this tape line. So this is my broadhead and this is my field point. So all I did is I moved my rest up 2 clicks. Interest of full transparency, I knew how far I needed to go just because I moved my rest out of, you know, having my broadheads and field points grouped together for sake of making this video. So just to kind of refresh, you know, what you guys should be doing is, I mean, you can choose to shoot at a circle, you know, across whatever it is. I like using this tape thing. I do it for just sighting in my bow. You know, of course, I'll always start with my windage, you know, get it set at 20, and then I'll work on my elevation, moving my pin around and stuff until I get, you know, right in the center of the tape, and then back it up and just keep checking things the further and further back you go. It seems to really help the sight-in process. this broadhead tuning process is no different. So, I mean, having them here within, you know, like a ½ inch of each other, that's definitely within my margin of error from 60 yards. I pretty comfortably can hold groups of about maybe as bad as 3 inches from 60. So I know that these are grouping together. When you're worrying about your windage, okay, so always move your rest towards your broadhead. I will go in my office and explain that to you guys why, sitting in front of the camera. I'm going to come out of the sun and stuff here and go inside. But and then when you're working with your windage, or not your windage, excuse me, your elevation, move away from your broadhead, so towards your field tip. I promise you, if you do that, it's usually just a couple clicks. You saw how much of a difference that made. I mean, we went from having, you know, 4.5 to 5 inches of impact difference between the two to having them within ½ an inch of each other in both circumstances. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm gonna get everything brought inside. My wife's been telling me dinner's ready, so I'm gonna eat, and then we will talk about this in the office, and I'll explain to you why this works the way that it does. So thank you very much. All right, so here we are back in the shop, or not shop, excuse me, my office technically, but it is like my at-home pro shop. Want to kind of finish up with a few final thoughts, and also kind of offer a little bit of an explanation as to why tuning your arrows the way that I showed you in this video works the way that it does. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and discuss the characteristics of a fixed blade broadhead. So if this is, you know, the broadhead that you're intending to shoot, okay, if everything is perfectly like straight, true, plumb, perfect, awesome, like, you know, my bow was before we built these arrows for it, you probably aren't really going to have to do anything at all if you get the perfect spine for this arrow or for your bow, based on whatever point and weight that you're using. It makes the rest of it really, really easy, right? Because you just have that arrow that's perfect for your bow. Now, this arrow is not going to shoot the same out of my Monster Safari or my Darton or anything else, right? But this arrow is perfectly built for my bow. Now, assuming you didn't go through that process, okay? You've done everything else. You paper tuned your bow, you're getting bullet holes, you know, you got everything sighted in, you're feeling really, really good about it. That's not a guarantee that your broadheads are going to group with your field points, and I'm going to explain to you why. So your field points, we'll grab one of them. They're very, very, very aerodynamic, okay? So they're the same shape in all directions as, you know, being looked at from the front, okay? It just basically looks like a circle with a little point on it. The air, as this arrow is pushing through the air, it creates a, you know, like an even pressure environment throughout the whole thing. That kind of helps to keep things a little more stable. Fixed blade broadheads are not the same, okay? So you have these two large surface areas on one side and the other. And what happens is this arrow can leave, you know, basically just the slightest bit off. And I'm talking just a ridiculously small amount, and you're not going to see it through paper. It's really, really difficult to read through paper, like the smallest of tail right, tail left tears, okay? You're not really going to notice it when you're shooting because things look so good and you're so used to it just looking like that, you know things are dialed in. The second that you put a fixed blade on there, okay, so what happens is if this arrow is slightly leaving at one orientation, whether that be left or right or up or down, it doesn't matter. You're not going to notice it till you put one of these on there, and the reason for that is because as it leaves your bow, if it's not leaving perfectly straight, if it is kind of slightly sideways, it launches at that until your arrow comes off the string. Then what happens, and I'm going to have to back up, then what happens is the vanes start to control and steer the broadhead, right? So they're going to start doing this, there's going to be a little bit of a fight, and it's going to level out pretty quickly. The problem is, if your arrow left the bow slightly angled one way, that's going to be the trajectory that it takes, okay? Versus a field point. Because they are so aerodynamic, you have the same amount of air pressure on all sides of this thing 360 degrees around. As soon as those vanes start taking over, it's going to pull it back towards that shot line and move this a little bit more to what it looks like when you're actually shooting it and getting things sighted in. Does that mean that this or this is shooting more true? I'm just going to tell you, trust this, okay? This is why we're moving the rest. That's why I said at the beginning of this video, you know, getting your field points to group with your broadheads, okay? Because if you can get this to fly perfect, this is easy. This is more work. So keeping in mind with the process, or the problem that we were discussing earlier, if this is slightly leaving just a little bit oriented out of whack, sure. I don't know why that suddenly quit filming on me, but anyway, I'm trying to work this GoPro thing. But anyway, as I was saying, if your arrow leaves your bow, okay, and you've got your fixed blade on the front, whatever that is doing, sure, you can correct that by making a rest adjustment by forcing the broadhead out away from the direction that it was going originally and clean that up. The problem is, it's not just affecting this. It's also affecting this. And what happens is, at least in my experience and the experience of many other people, if your arrows are flying like this, your broadhead's like this, your field point may be straight, you move that rest, now this goes like this, and this goes like this. Then you move it again, and you move it again. Eventually you moved it so much that they are grouping together, but you're nowhere near where your center shot even started. And you know, sometimes with rests based on what your arrow setup you're using, you may not be able to shoot from your center shot, but you'll notice all of a sudden that your sight tape, it's almost like your sight tape is too fast, and it's because you moved your rest so far one way or the other that your field point is no longer flying as true and perfect as it can be. It's increasing the amount of drag, your arrow's not moving as quick. It's definitely not flying as well as it used to. You just know that your broadheads and your field points are grouping together. So because this one is already kind of not launching perfect or truly perfect, right? By moving it a little bit more out of, I guess, from the direction of what most people would consider to be perfect, is causing it to move less than forcing both of these over the opposite direction. The other thing that you're going to notice with this is that tiny little bit of a movement. Sure, this may not have been perfect, and this may even technically be considered, I guess, minutely less perfect. Now this one is grouping perfectly with this one, and you may just be just the smallest amount off. It's definitely a lot closer than shoving this one over this way and causing this one to move with it. Because, you know, let's face it, in a perfect world, out of a dedicated hunting setup, most people may just go, hey, because I'm never going to target practice with this thing, I'm just going to put fixed blade broadheads on it, I'm going to sight it for my broadheads, and I'm just going to shoot them all year round. Okay, there are people, I'm sure, that do it. Honestly, broadheads are kind of expensive, so not what I would do. You know, and you're going to be buying a lot more targets and stuff because they do just carve them up, but we ultimately, in a perfect world, we want these both to fly and group together. That way, because you know this is going where this is going, you can practice with this in your off time, in the off season, and you know when it's hunting time, as long as you didn't bump things out or your bow fell out of tune, that this is going to fly with it. So traditionally, you know, like before I kind of got, you know, wise and started figuring this stuff out, you know, I used to, just like everybody else, you know, watch YouTube videos, you know, ask for advice, wisdom, you know, from people that maybe had more of it than I did to help explain to me why things worked the way that they worked. And by accident, one day I just kind of discovered this way of kind of broadhead tuning. And it's because I had moved my rest so far in on an arrow trying to get it to group that I was like, okay, now my field points are grouping super far out of the way, and now my rest as it's coming down is smacking the inside of my riser. That can't be right. So I'm just going to go back the opposite direction. And it's like I went back to center, knew that going this way didn't work, so now I was going to try this way, and it was just a couple little rest adjustments and they were flying perfectly. So I don't like want to upset or offend anybody or ruffle any feathers or anything. My whole goal for sharing this is, you know, if you've had a similar experience to like what I was discussing, where it's like you're trying things the way that people do them and it's not working the way that they said it would, maybe try something else out. That's the whole purpose as to why I built these arrows in the first place, right? Because there are a lot of opinion. A lot of people will tout them and represent them as fact. there was something so altruistic for me about, like, hey, this is a nonprofit organization trying to share with me, you know, like the secrets to, you know, like a perfect recipe. And they're not making any money off it because they're a nonprofit. They don't sell anything. What do they have to win by me following what it is that they teach, right? And, you know, so at the end of the day, I just kind of want to help share information, help us to be more accurate, consistent bow hunters, better, you know, at-home bow techs, because, you know, always support your local shop, and there's usually always going to be things that you're going to need to bring your bow to them for. But I just wanted to tell you guys, like, this stuff's not really super difficult. Definitely nothing you need to be intimidated over. This season, when you're putting on your broadheads, my hope would be that you'd be shooting an efficient cut-on-contact head, something that doesn't have the energy dump that a broadhead with moving parts is going to. But try it. Screw on your fixed blades. Try it the way that I said. For your windage, if you're having impact changes between your broadheads and your field points, for your windage, move your rest towards your broadhead. For your elevation, move it away from where the broadhead is impacting. Clearest way I can say that is, you know, if your broadhead's grouping to the left of your field point, move your rest to the left. If your broadhead is grouping above your field point, move your rest down. So anyway, I hope that this video helps somebody out there. Please do share your experiences, leave a comment. Definitely please like, share, and subscribe this video. Want to help this channel grow, and like I've said a few times now, if there's anything that I can do as far as a video idea that you guys may have, definitely share it in the comment box below. Would love to see them, and love to know how I could help somebody else out. So thank you so much. You all have a great day. Happy hunting.